Session and call it to order. Director Hamada will not be in attendance this evening, and Chief Accountability Officer Dr. Harmon and Mr. Roy, is it Keegan, or is that how you say Keegan? Kogan, thank you, of Kutak Rock Law Firm are both attending the meeting via phone. At this time, Interim Superintendent Vela, will you please introduce Mr. Rarick?
Absolutely. Thank you, President Daniels. I'd like to introduce Mr. Ben Rarick, our Executive Director of Budget and Finance, who will begin our presentation tonight. He will also be introducing some other guests. So, Mr. Rarick.
Good evening, board members, Interim Superintendent Vela. My name is Ben Rarick. I'm the Executive Director of Budget and Finance, and it is my pleasure to introduce Mark Pressing. Mark has been the financial advisor to the district since at least 2017, since I've been here, and has helped us through the series of issues that, and when I say issues, I mean bond issues, that we have executed since the voters of Kent authorized the bond back in 2016. So what you're going to be hearing about today are the plans for the final issue. So we have been through 3 previous issues. This will be now the 4th and final issue that will raise the remaining amount from that original authorization from the voters. So after this, we will be through the capacity of that first authorization. What we're doing tonight is actually a formal part of the bond sale process. So when a school district has a $42 million transaction of this type, part of the process is a formal presentation to the board on the goals of that sale and an opportunity for the board to ask any questions that they may have. Some of the details that Mr. Pressing might share are going to seem probably overly technical, and that's part of the presentation, but also this really impacts a number of things. It impacts our tax rate planning, which is something obviously that our community cares about. It impacts the cycle of levies and bonds in our school district. It impacts our capacity for additional construction projects in the future. And so even though some of this is technical, there are very much meaty policy issues that we want to make sure the board is apprised of. So without further ado, I'd like to bring Mark up, and he's actually going to be giving the presentation. I will make myself available with Mr. Pressing at the end to answer any questions you may have.
Good evening, President Daniels, members of the board, Superintendent Vela. So as Ben said, in part of a bond sale, we're trying to make sure that we're doing, your finance team, we're doing what it is that you want us to do. So with that, we're trying to identify the goals of the sale. And I'll just give it, let's see if I can walk through here a little bit. Okay, we'll go this way. So I'm going to talk about the bond market, kind of what's going on right now with interest rates, go through those bond sale goals and make sure that we're in agreement with what we're trying to accomplish. Talk just briefly about the finance team so you know who the people are that are here and then on the phone and working on your behalf. Projected tax rates has been said. A lot of this is when we communicate to voters, it's what are the costs per thousand in dollars and what's it going to cost me in my home. So we look at our tax rates very carefully, and not just the bond tax rate, but the total district tax rate when combining the other levies. And then we'll look at a preliminary schedule of events. So the good news is the bond market right now, interest rates are at the lowest point in history for municipal bond interest rates. This has been the best time to borrow on behalf of district taxpayers for the last 30 years. So, while I might say it's good planning, it's a little bit of luck here that we're actually kind of held off this last piece to sell now because it's definitely saving taxpayers money by getting these really low interest rates. If you're listening to the radio, you might hear about the Fed action today, and they're maybe curtailing their bond program, blah, blah, blah. It's always something. The general expectation is interest rates are going to rise over the next year, but for sure between now and the time we sell bonds, I think we're in good shape to really garner these interest rates. So I'm not too concerned about them changing. And we try to use some conservative estimates when we project what interest rates are going to be because we really don't know what they're going to be. So we always build in a little bit of a cushion anyway in our information. So a little bit of history back in 2016 when voters approved these bonds, it's $252 million in bonds. 2017, $80 million was sold, and then 2018, another 80. The last sale in 2019 was $50 million, and then this would be the final $42 million. But you'll notice at the bottom, the tax rate that voters were told to expect for the bonds associated with that election was $1.41 per thousand. And that's a tax rate per thousand for just the bond tax rate. But things have changed a lot since 2016, and we've adjusted that since then. So one of the changes in the operating levy, we know it changed to $2.50 per thousand from $1.50 per thousand. So, guys, is there something we can do with the bond side to help the district capture a little bit more of the operating levy ability? And we moved the operating levy up to a $2.15 tax rate, but we lowered the bond component so it wasn't a huge increase when with that operating levy happened. So with the bonds, we can kind of move them around until we sell them. You know, you think about how we're making your payments. Imagine if you're taking out a home mortgage and you knew, well, I've got 2 years from now, I want to buy a car. So I'm going to have a payment for 3 years for that car. Could I lower my house payment for that 3 years? And so my total money going out the door is about right. Well, we can do that with bonds. You can't do that with your home, but we can do that with bonds for district until we actually sell this sale. So we also had a technology levy increase in 2018 that raised quite a bit of additional money for the district. And we then are also looking at, I'll touch on what happens in the future when in tax rates 3 or 4 years from now. What happens next time the district needs some money for capital facilities, and how can we accommodate that as part of this bond sale goal? I skipped over this slide briefly. Again, my name is Mark Pressing. I work with ESD 112. We have a financial advisory services program. We work through an interlocal government agreement with the district to essentially be an extension of your staff, district staff, but with some expertise in the bond markets. And as Ben said, I'm helping as a financial advisor kind of identify all the alternatives we're working, but I work in a fiduciary capacity to you to make sure the recommendations I'm giving are in the best interest, I believe, in the district and district taxpayers. Also on the phone, I believe, is Roy Cogan from Kutak Rock. Roy's your legal counsel. So while I look at the finance side, Roy is doing everything to make sure that everything we're doing is in compliance with local law, state law, federal securities laws, because these are public debt instruments we're issuing, federal tax laws. And by the time we've done all of that, and part of that is with the resolution you'll be looking at, and in a little bit we'll talk about, that everything you've done has been legally issued, and the bonds are exempt from federal income tax, the interest on those bonds. By doing that, you get a much lower interest rate on your bonds, and they express a legal opinion that the bonds are exempt from income tax. So really the legal side, Roy is kind of think of the second leg of the stool. The underwriter, in this case, D.A. Davidson and Piper Sandler, they've been the district's underwriters for the prior issues as well. Their job is to buy the bonds from a district, turn around and sell them to investors. So they find the buyers for the bonds. So those are the three parties you'll hear the names of as your financial advisor, the ESD 112, Kutak Rock, and then D.A. Davidson and Piper Sandler as the underwriters. So jump into the projected tax rates, and I'm kind of speeding through this, I know, but really why I'm here is to answer questions you may have. So please interrupt me, and I like talking about bonds. I like bonds, so I can get carried away sometimes. But right now, the district tax rate, we're thinking to be, I like the graph kind of here. If you see the green being the operating levy, the technology levy in orange, and then blue being the existing bonds, the yellow being the new bonds. We're in 2021, the total district tax rate's $3.83 per thousand. And you'll see how we've managed that to be somewhat level over the last few years, even though we've increased the operating levy and we've increased the technology levy. We've kept the total for district taxpayers about the same. And so that's what we're trying to look at. What do we want to do going forward? One of the things we'll talk about also is you'll notice that there's a drop in between 2023 and 24. We only got so many bonds to sell, so we can only keep that bond component up so much. Now we think that these are tax rates based on information that doesn't include the new assessed values coming out, which are going to be higher. So I think these tax rates will be lower than they're in here. But the real message is it's probably time to start thinking about the next funding measure, whether that be for capital facilities. If the state were to change, for example, the operating levy lids that allowed you to collect more operating levy, we could accommodate that. But in 2023, if you had an election for an additional facility that come on in 2024, that'd kind of be the optimum time. I know there isn't any discussion about that right now, but I just wanted to highlight that really is the time would be best suited to have a new funding measure, either a capital levy or a bond, to keep that tax rate up. Otherwise, it'll drop down, and then having it increase after that is always harder to tell voters, well, your taxes are going to increase. So this is just the same thing numerically. I kind of like to look at the graph. So one of the things I've been asking Ben when we're identifying the goals is, what are the operating levy numbers going to be? We think that, again, this 383 is probably going to drop down because this has a number in here that's a higher enrollment, and you're now capped by the enrollment cap. We had this $2.15 cap per thousand that we were kind of voluntarily managing toward. Now with the enrollment declining and assessed value going way up, kind of both those things happen at the same time, you're going to be limited by the per pupil lid under the state law. So that number is going to be a little bit lower than we're showing in here. Here I have a number 75 million. Ben, I think you said it's more like lower 70s probably in that. So all that means these are preliminary, and we won't really know them until we get the assessed values and the assessor does their work. But we're trying to manage towards some level tax rate so taxpayers kind of know what to expect in their bill. The item before you on your next meeting, October 13th, and this is why the district felt it would be good to have a work study session before your actual consideration of that resolution, would be, because it can be kind of technical, it's actually the full bond resolution, and it's what's called a delegating bond resolution, in that you delegate to the superintendent, interim superintendent, and Mr. Rarick the ability to set the final terms and conditions on the bonds. Investors kind of want to know that morning, you know, when they sell they're going to loan you $42 million, do they have a yes or no? So they want the answer then, and it's hard to get the board together to do that. So your action on October 13th, should you approve that resolution to be the board's final action related to the bond sale, and then it's up to the finance team to go out and take your marching orders and implement that. We'd look at a bond sale on November 9th. One more item in here, we're going to have a call with Moody's Investor Service on October 5th, where we talk about the credit strengths of the district, and those that have been here for a while know that that's been a challenge, and the district was downgraded to a very low rate. But I will say right now, Kent School District is one of the most financially sound school districts in the state of Washington. The ratings have come up substantially. We had an upgrade recently we talked about, I believe it was last spring. And so I don't expect any issues at all with the rating. It's really been a success story, honestly, just since the time that I've been here. Your direction to the finance staff and their implementation of that has really put Kent back into a very positive light. And the rating agencies have been impressed too with what you've been doing. So that's one piece. It'll be kind of a fun call this time. And so, there have been times it hasn't been a very fun call. So this should go well. And then we'd have the funds in hand on December 7th. I put some information in here on bond planning and capital planning process. The real message here is it takes a while, at least a year before you're going to put something on the ballot. And especially when you consider the community input of what are you going to do, develop, kind of do the whole facilities assessment, determine the priorities, the needs. It could take at least a year to do that. And so should you want to do that, going forward for a bond, you probably want to start thinking along those lines a little bit sooner. Again, there are options for capital levies, and there are pros and cons. We'll talk about that as a separate discussion, what they can be used for versus bonds. The capital levies are nice that you have a 50% approval. Everybody notices that versus the 60%. And some districts that I've worked with during the pandemic had bond plans that they decided to put on hold because they felt voters would not have the appetite to approve a bond measure when there was so much turmoil. I think that was probably a good choice. And so they actually put capital levies in place for a 6-year capital levy to kind of hold that place in the tax rate, if you will, that step down, thinking they may roll that capital levy back down the road if they decide to go for a bond within that 6-year period of time. So there's some things that we can do. If you came to me and Ben and said, well, we don't think we're going to be ready in 2023, but we could be 2025. There's some options you'd have that we'd discuss kind of as a separate planning topic, I think. But the takeaway is that we're really trying to look not just at what this is, but how to strategically use this bond measure. And once we sell them, we've kind of used all of our tools to do that, to help the district with additional funding measures going forward. So again, I'm happy to take questions about the resolution. I'm not your legal counsel, but I can generally handle general questions, but if Roy's available, I know he can chime in as well on that.
I don't have necessarily a question on where we are right now, what you presented, but I think I'm more interested in what it is that we need to be prepared to know, to look at future planning for what, as you said, 23 versus 25. I'm particularly interested how enrollment impacts that, and I don't know, this might be a Ben question. So what do we need to do to plan right now to understand about future funding plans?
So Ben, I don't know if you want me to take that, to kind of the enrollment has two pieces, both the operating side and the facility needs for capacity.
So I can speak a little bit to the enrollment piece. And then Mark, maybe you can talk about kind of, as you've seen so many districts do that planning process, like the major milestone parts of it. Yeah, so, you know, I've been having almost weekly conversations with Mark for like 6 months, it seems like, trying to be the most strategic and really think this through. There are some things you don't control, right? There are some things that you can't necessarily predict about the future that really factor heavily into whether this goes as smoothly as you want it to go. And one of them is enrollment. So when school systems experience declining enrollments, there's two things that happen. One's the obvious one you all know, which is we receive less state funding, right? Because we receive an allocation and general apportionment. The other one that people don't tend to think about is the levy side of it. So under the current state law, it also is a reduction in levy funding because we are capped by the amount of students. We are allowed to raise a certain amount per student. And as we have fewer students, the amount we can raise drops. So we can do all of this sophisticated long-range planning in terms of like, okay, so, and we really do this, as you see in the slide, like in 2024, we want to be here, and then maybe we sell a bond, and we really thought all of that through as carefully as I think somebody can. But if you lose 2,000 students, or you gain 2,000 students for that matter, you know, these are things that can impact what you can do in that moment, and it just kind of is what it is. You have the inability to make these sorts of adjustments, like, you know, in the moment, right? These are plans that you're making years ahead. So for all the years prior to my coming to Kent, enrollment was incredibly stable for like a decade. It was always right around like that 26,500 number. It was up or down a couple hundred every year, but it was one of the more stable districts in the state, actually. And now we're in a new era, and it just makes it a little harder. Not harder so much. Well, yeah, it's just a little bit more speculative, I would say, in terms of managing the tax rate and planning funding measures. And there's essentially nothing we can do with that other than obviously do the best we can to serve the kids we do have well and hopefully attract kids into our system.
But in terms of planning, I'm just wondering how, you know, I understand serving our kids as best as we can, but this affects so many different issues, our levy coming up. So I guess it would be good to have some type of even if it's speculative, some scenarios that we can look at. It just seems like a huge task to get into without.
And I've done those. And to give you a real practical answer, the first basic answer is it reduces your tax rate. So think about it this: fewer students, you can raise less. Mm-hmm. You raise less on the same property value. Kent's property value is, you know, isn't necessarily changing as we gain or lose students necessarily, maybe on the margins. That tax rate comes down. As the tax rate comes down, then you have to think about, as 2023, 2024 rolls around, how you're packaging your next funding measure to your community with the tax rates you have at that time, which will have been different than the tax rates that you thought you would have. So I have run several scenarios in which, for example, we lose more students, we remain constant, or we bounce back. And I think about those scenarios mostly in the context of how much we can raise from our community, and therefore what our tax rate would be, and therefore what is the perfect timing, if there is to be a perfect timing, of a next iteration of funding measure. Because that influences if you're still with me, that influences how long we can keep the tax rate fluid and constant, as opposed to a sort of a yo-yoing effect where we go down and then we have to go back out and ask, and it appears as if a big increase has happened, but in fact, it's more or less constant with what it used to be. Those are the things that you try to avoid, but you can't always avoid them because you're predicting the future.
So I think what we're going to do as part of this is make our best shot at it and put it, if we had $100 million in bonds to sell, we'd have more to front load into those yellow bars, if you will. If you kind of look at this graph here, we only have $42 million is a lot of money, but if we had more, we could kind of front load and keep it longer. Right now, we're only looking at maybe another couple of years with this $42 million. So we'll figure out how best to do that. And then the discussion about the next funding measure will follow. I think the message for this evening is it probably better be sooner than later, not a couple of years from now. Is more like I'll maybe start kind of ramping that up a little bit now and looking at the facilities needs and how best then to do that. And then I'll be back in front of you with the board study session on kind of facilities funding, which will be a separate topic of discussion.
Thank you.
I have a question. I know in the spring we had talked about planning, and so I don't know who this is a question for, but we had talked about looking at facilities and doing a facilities assessment, and that we were going to get a list of what the age of the buildings, when they were last renovated, et cetera, et cetera. So I was just wondering, I don't know who has that or when we're going to get that, but we were told that we were going to get that at some point. I'm sure it's a time to collect all that information.
Good evening, board members. Director Benno, yep, absolutely, that was me. And just so that you know, we are still compiling that information together. And then back to Director Vengadasam, just to let you know, here's a sheet on our next bond planning. Israel and I have been talking about this for more than 6 months about how we go out for our next bond and just what it is that we want to do. There are many things that we can do in this district with our next bond. We have many schools that need to be replaced. Pine Tree, Lake Youngs, you're talking about schools that were built in the 60s. Meridian Elementary School, the front part of that was built in 1938. It's still active today. I don't want to tear it down. I want to renovate it because I think it's a piece of our history I'd love to do. And then we need to talk about what we're going to do with the 172 portables. That equates to 5 elementary schools or 5 middle schools.
Get rid of it.
Exactly. So again, just so that you know, keep in mind that Israel and I, before Israel became the interim superintendent, before Randy and I got a chance to start talking, we are in progress right now of getting a timeline in for the next bond for what we can do and what we would like to do in getting those projects set up.
Can I ask a follow-up? I don't know what we're able to do with some of these bonds. I guess that's part of what I'm being educated on. I know there's a lot of concern about like HVAC stuff. Is that able to be upgraded in bond levies of the bonds that we're talking about now? Or
Absolutely.
Okay. Thank you.
And I think it's actually really good news, if you think about it, because we're setting this up for a step down in the future. I worked with North Shore School District. I was at their board meeting last week, and they have this step in their tax rate. And it gives them a lot of flexibility to go out and say, look, we can accomplish all of these goals as priority list without increasing your taxes and your tax rates because of this long-term planning process. It is a long-term planning process. Having said that, no plan ever survives contact with the enemy, right? Is that what they say? I think, and so this part of this, in fact, the last bond sale, we contemplated selling all the rest of the bonds then. And I suggested to Ben, let's hold back some because we'll know more 2 or 3 years from now than we do right now about what the district's future plans are, and I think that served the district well.
Yeah, I just would like more information and scenarios too as well, just because I've been hearing enrollment is down. So again, it all is a big package, and just this one event is kind of tied to many other events. So, it's not just a moment in time for this $42 million sale, but, I just want to see how it all fits into the larger picture. So not a question, just a comment. I'm reiterating what
And if I might just add, Mr. Buzzer and I have been talking about it for some time, and back to Director Vengadaslam's question, I introduced to Mr. Buzzard the idea of modernization planning, and that is something that that when we think about buildings, it's not only about building that brand-new building like we have KLA and River Ridge, it's really about thinking about how do we triangulate all of these efforts with bond sales, tax rates and those pieces, but how do we plan ahead to already be planning for replacing that roof, for example, to already be planning for that HVAC that may be modern today but not in the future. And that's why the modernization planning is something we've talked about, and we want to look out toward the future on how we do this. That works in conjunction with what we're hearing today. So thank you for bringing that up.
So do we have like a 1-year, 5-year, 10-year, 20-year plan?
That's part of it. If Mr. Buzzard, do you want to?
Absolutely. Thank you, Interim Superintendent Vela. Yes, Vice President Bettinger, we are working on that plan right now. And I do want to speak to one thing. I know that Ben's done a really good job and enrollment's down. That's not a big secret. But I do have to tell you that the King County reports that we've been getting from Warren Chaney show an extreme amount of production on the permitting side. So that's a good call for Kent and the Kent area, especially the Maple Valley area and Covington. And if anybody's been down 256 at the Stone Quarry, that's 1,750 houses in this school district.
Yeah, I was going to mention that. There is quite a bit of development.
It is, and that developer, it started out as, I think, around 2,800, and they said no. So I've been working with the new developer down there now that still wants to put about 1,700 homes, and Mr. Buzzard is definitely looking for 12 acres down there. That's all I can tell you. We need 12 acres.
All right. That's good news.
Thank you, appreciate it. I didn't have any questions. Okay, thank you. No, I didn't have questions.
Any other questions we can field at this time? This will be the last time that you see Mr. Pressing until, what was it, October?
October 13th, I don't think I wouldn't be at that meeting, but I'd be available. But,
He's available by phone on the 13th, which is when the authorizing delegating resolution will be before you. And then the actual sale is scheduled for November 9th.
Thank you for coming.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Okay. All right, so we are going to adjourn our work session, and we will adjourn into executive session at 6:30 p.m. to go over the qualifications of an employee and to discuss, sorry about that, and to discuss district litigation or potential litigation to which the district is likely to become a party, and we will return at 7 p.m. to our regular meeting. Thank you.
I love Lenny. He's so fun. He's very really? Yeah. Yes. We need her. So we'll send all of us in. My dad was on ours for 33 years. Yep. 33 years.
Yeah. All right, I'd like to call our board meeting to order for the evening. A couple of announcements. Director Hamada is not attending today. She is excused. And Dr. Jewel Harmon, Chief Accountability Officer, will be joining us by phone. Director Benno, would you please lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance?
I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. I'd like to welcome everyone to our board meeting. This is a meeting of the Kent School District Board, which is held in public to comply with the Open Public Meetings Act. We welcome the public's participation in this board meeting and thank those of you who have come to this meeting and those who are viewing via live stream. The KSD staff has done its best to advise you of the governor's order requiring those in attendance to wear masks. The process for audience participation is as follows. The purpose of board meetings is for the board to conduct its business in public. During the meeting, the board will listen to but not respond to comments from visitors. Those wishing to comment must complete a comment card and turn it in to Naomi Zantinello either before the meeting begins or no later than agenda item 4.01, the legislative report. No cards will be accepted once the legislative report has begun. Visitors who completed a comment card indicating a desire to speak to an agenda item will be called at that portion of the agenda. There is a brief delay in the live stream audio. We will allow for extra time for you to make your way to the boardroom if you are in an overflow room. When it is your turn to address the board, your mask needs to remain on while making your comment. Please state your name at the start of your testimony. Public comments will be heard after the opening during preliminary communication from the audience, at specific agenda items, and during final communication from the audience. Students will be the first to speak on any topic. Please limit your remarks to 3 minutes. You will hear a timer when 3 minutes are up. Please do not use specific names of staff or students or personal identifiable information. Abusive public comments personally directed towards staff or board members will not be tolerated. The president may interrupt or terminate an individual statement when it is too lengthy, obscene, or irrelevant. Per board procedure, written material to provide board members with background information should be submitted to the superintendent's office at least 1 week in advance of the meeting. Vice President Benjer, would you please read our land acknowledgement?
Yes. We acknowledge we are gathered upon the ancestral lands of the Muckleshoot Indian tribe, who historically lived throughout the area between the Cascade Mountains and Puget Sound.
Thank you. Interim Superintendent Vela, are there any changes to our agenda?
Yes, President Daniels, a supplemental personnel report has been added to the consent agenda as item 6.06.
Thank you. Can we have a motion?
I move that we add the supplemental personnel report to the consent agenda as item 6.06.
A second.
Okay, it has been moved and seconded. Is there any discussion?
I just want to say, I've requested this before. I'd prefer if we don't do supplemental personnel reports. I'd like us to move towards not doing that, so it's more open and transparent. That's all I have to say.
Additional discussion? I'll call for the vote. All those in favor of adding the supplemental personnel report as agenda item 6.06, please indicate by raising your right hand and saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed indicate by raising your right hand and saying no. Any abstentions? The motion carries. We are on to agenda item 2.0, our preliminary communication from the audience. Ms. Santinello.
Good evening, President Daniels, Interim Superintendent Vela, and board members. This evening, we have received online comments, 2 of which are student comments, so we'll hear those first, and I will begin with the first one, submitted by student Trevor Tom. Hello, Kent School Board Board Directors and Interim Superintendent Vela. My name is Trevor Tom, and I'm a current 11th grader at Kent Ridge High School. The PSAT will not be offered at any KSD schools this year. I am addressing this topic because KSD is supposed to be about preparing all students for their futures, not just some. By not offering the PSAT and SAT, this hurts a lot of students, including me. This test is not for admissions in schools, but it's for a program called the National Merit Scholarship. It offers a lot of benefits with performing well on this exam. The principal of Kent Ridge and the superintendent of KSD listed that one reason the test will not be offered is because 82% of KSD graduating seniors enter a Washington State college or university. This is not relevant due to the fact that in this case, there is still an 18% difference in students who do not fit in that category. While the schools won't offer it this year, my high school has not let any of the current 11th graders know that they won't be offering it. The only people who are aware are people that I've told or those who tried to reach out for information. Many of my friends tried to get information about the PSAT, but they, of course, got relayed the same information I had already been given. There is also a big misunderstanding with how students can sign up for PSAT. I keep getting told by my counselor that you can sign up for the PSAT through College Board. You simply cannot. You can for the SAT, but not for PSAT. The only thing College Board does is provide the schools who offer the PSAT and which date, either primary or the weekend slot, or the alternative date. This is not very helpful at all because then I have to reach out to a lot of schools, pull up contact information, draft an email, and then wait to see if they even let outsiders take the exam at their school. Many of the schools I've already reached out to have declined outsiders like me. This is a huge disservice to students at Kent Ridge and across the whole Kent School District. We as students work hard and we shouldn't be disallowed to take the test for merit. We deserve the opportunity, just like all other schools around us and the 1.5 million plus 11th graders around the nation who take the test. Do the right thing and please offer this to all 11th graders across the district in the upcoming future. Thank you for your time and consideration. The second student comment submitted online is by Nathan Lee. Greetings. I aim to speak unofficially on the behalf of every 11th and 12th grader of the Kent School District with this opportunity. The issue we face stems from the school district's choice to not administer the PSAT and SAT for juniors and seniors in KSD high schools. In previous years, high schools helped provide students with access to the PSAT and SAT every fall without fail. As such, this decision has left many of us squandered with no formal announcement of the decision and non-existent accommodation. This is a massive shortcoming this year and essentially deprives juniors access to opportunities such as the National Merit Scholarships, as well as negatively affecting post-secondary admissions for seniors. From our perspective, there is no acceptable reason justifying this lack of action and accountability. Is the success of the current generation of students not worth investing in? Is this truly a reflection of the KSD's standard of equity and excellence and motto of successful preparation for the future? Is the Kent School District willing to muster up the effort to do the right thing for us students? As much as I want to not be let down, it saddens me to realize that the answer to all of these questions is no. That concludes the online student comments.
Thank you. All right, I will call on the first in-person comment, Jody Madden.
Yeah, we have them numbered, but we prefer
prefer that they go in that order. Thank you. That's possible. There's no number on Joey Madden's. Oh, it's on the back. Oh, okay. Oh, got it. So I have them wrong. Okay, my fault. Got it. So this is first. So, okay, so Manuel Godinez? Oh, they're not in order. So I'll put them in order. It's okay. It's okay. Michael Wilson?
Dear Kent School District Board Directors, we, the collective known as the Kent Educators of Color Network, are addressing you on behalf of our scholars, their families, our co-workers, and varied levels in all departments. After nearly a month of observing the Kent School District's 2021-22 academic year policies, protocols, and procedures regarding COVID-19, it is our assertion that the inconsistency in enforcement of them and their lack of clarity and transparency are putting our student body, their families, and Kent School District staff at great physical and emotional risk. According to the King County Department of Health, county numbers for COVID-19 cases are 773 times worse than they were when Governor Inslee mandated a shutdown of the in-person school for the remainder of the year in March of 2020. 6.5 times worse than they were 1 year ago when Kent School District opted for district-wide remote learning and currently are sharply rising. This time with our young scholars directly in the crosshairs of the more transmittable Delta variant. Yet here we are, having started an in-person school year after an entire year of virtual learning, with no formal contingency plans involving virtual learning or temporary shutdowns, despite having ample planning time all of last year and this past summer. Worse yet, at this given time, there's an absolute absence of any discussion regarding a virtual learning option for those who are currently required or desire it, nor are there plans regarding a temporary shutdown should the increasing numbers dictate it. The lack of foresight we have displayed regarding these issues is quite frankly negligent to all of us. We have also vaguely reported COVID transmissions in buildings across the Kent School District, lack of district-facilitated COVID testing, inequitable supplies of PPE from building to building, inconsistent communication to families, especially those whose first language is not English, and varying degrees of air quality from building to building in overcrowded classrooms at a time when Centers for Disease Control and other pandemic experts are urging the importance of pure airflow, especially for children and immune compromised folks. We believe we have a monumental civic duty to the scholars and families of Kent who have entrusted their most valued gifts, our care and stewardship. Neighboring school districts such as Tahoma, Highline, Seattle, and North Shore, to name a few, are honoring their constituents with concerted measures of accurate, clear, and consistent communication systems in place regarding COVID cases. Daily reports of COVID numbers, cases by buildings, details specifically addressing the number of staff and students with COVID.
Excuse me,
And the
Mr.
clear.
Wilson. I apologize. Your 3 minutes are. Can you please finish your statement?
And the clear plans of expectations of the students and teachers who either contact COVID or must quarantine them because of the close contact of exposure to the virus. Why can't our district follow suit? We cannot afford to let the Kent School District stand behind the excuses of being in transition with the turnover of multiple board positions and trying to replace a superintendent for its inaction in this critical time. On behalf of our scholars and their families, we simply cannot accept the line of rhetoric anymore. Having no plan set in place for these, like remote education, or more clear plans for communicating case numbers and COVID protocols at a timely manner and timely bargaining with our various labor unions, including our bus drivers, is inexcusable. The bus drivers who are risking their lives in overcrowded buses twice daily to safely transport our young ones to and from home and their buildings.
Mr. Wilson, I apologize. I need you to finish your last statement and then move on. You've extended your time.
I'm number 2 and I'm deferring my time to Michael.
Okay.
Have themselves recently taken a stand, and we acknowledge their care and sacrifice and want them to know that we stand by them as well. Our formal ask is more transparency and consistent communication from the Kent School District on several fronts, including COVID numbers by building cases, specific numbers of infected students and staff, and improved and equitable communication to all families. Kent School District plans for increasing staff for district tech support and upgrading district-wide one-to-one technology, especially at the elementary level, as several students are without laptops and cannot share due to COVID restrictions, might need them if remote learning is necessary. Plans for adequate staffing at buildings, so when people are out and substitutes are scarce, there are folks in place to make sure jobs get done redundantly. What the contingency plans are for possible remote learning, option for students and staff that may need or simply want that option. An option for students and staff when they are at home in quarantine but able to work. Students out for 10 days, what's the expectation for them to accessing education? An option so we prepared if students need to shut down like we did in the spring of 2020. Exactly how the district is spending and plans to spend the approximately $6 to $9 million it received from the federal government's elementary, secondary school emergency relief, COVID relief fund, not to mention the approximately $60 million the district currently has in its coffers. What, if anything, is the district doing to secure more funds from future rounds of ESSER, and what the plans for equitable distribution for those funds across the district? Kent School District board members, our scholars deserve better. As you currently expect more from your teachers and staff, we expect more of our district. It is this era where our students and staff physically and mental health are on the line like no other time in human history. Kent School District should be exhausting every available resource to lead us through this pandemic safely. We demand action immediately and immediate changes which reflect the times we find ourselves in. Now is the opportunity for us to show that we can do better. We must move swiftly before, God forbid, we end up facing something as horrific or irreversible as the death of a scholar due to COVID that could have been prevented. In earnest, Kent Educators of Color Network. Thank you.
And I apologize, is it Guyla Kennedy? Okay. And then we have Denisha Sacido.
First, I just want to address you and just say thank you for giving us the time to explain to you why we need to be here. I'm going to say that I have a migraine, and so my words are coming out just a little bit different, but it's perfect that I'm here speaking when I have a migraine because I want to pick up where Michael left off to talk to you a little bit about mental health. It is critical that we slow down and we take into consideration the fact that we are all still in the midst of a pandemic. I hear our students talking about testing because that's all they know. That's the way that they get opportunities. We know it's not the right way. We know that testing is not what's beneficial to students, but unfortunately, it's what we have right now so they can have other opportunities. But instead, we are choosing to give them iReady, SBA, DIBELS, ERLA, assessments that come with their curriculum, but we're taking away the ones that can give them opportunities. I'm asking that we slow down, that we take a look at your students and your staff, and we are struggling. We are struggling because we are all trying to get our footing straight. We don't know how to navigate COVID-19. And it's not going to happen if we all can't think straight. And students are worried about testing, and parents are worried about whether their kids are safe, and teachers are worried about their next lesson plan because students are crying because they don't want to do this and they don't want to be here. So my ask, or our ask, is that we slow down and remember that social emotional learning does not just apply to a lesson that we teach every day for 30 minutes, which, by the way, not every school is doing that for 30 minutes, right? So we ask that you slow down and take a look into every building and make sure that everyone understands that the social emotional health, the well-being of staff and students come first. We don't need, or we don't have to say, oh, we lost a year, let's hurry up and go, We gotta slow down, and we have to remember that these are human beings that we're dealing with, and we're all hurting, and everyone's hurting. And so our ask about communication is more of, people are gonna make up stories. You're gonna make up a narrative to something that you don't understand. And so if we want clarity and if we want people to believe in what we're doing, then we need transparency and we need humanization of where we're at. We're all struggling, but we can't mask it. Instead, we have to, okay, talk to your teachers, talk to your students, figure out why it is that they're struggling and what we can do to support them.
Tamara?
Hello, everyone. My name is Tamara Lucretia. I'm the ISS para at Mill Creek Middle School. Normally, I deal with students that have some behavior issues. I need to build those relationships so we can get over the hurdle to get them to a place where they can learn. Because you're not going to teach a kid if they don't like you. My job right now is not just ISS, although I do have students coming in at ISS. My role is regulation room, where kids are struggling and they're trying to figure out how they're going to make it through this day. So they come into my room to breathe. And I love it. I love that I'm available for that. Because I'm not punitive. I'm only not just punitive. Our kids are struggling. Let's talk about equity. Last year, we proved that we can have equity. We can teach kids online. And we stopped it today. We stopped it this year. From an equity lens, how are you going to take that away from the small percentage of children that felt that that was a great option for them? Yet I'm getting these kids in my room because they can't handle basic every day. And I have them saying, Miss T, I wish I can be online. But we took that away from them. And I work at Kent School District, and we have something on here that says we are about equity, and we're not showcasing that. My expectation is that some of these leaders here, and the only reason why we're here is because we knew we would get you guys in one room, because you guys have gatekeepers as assistants, not getting emails to you, and we're coming together as a collective. We're speaking on behalf of all educators, all scholars, all families. So if you don't read the emails, listen to the words now. We're not playing. I have principals in isolation rooms for half a day because y'all couldn't figure out how to get somebody in there. You all, we don't interact, but you can raise your hand and tell me which principal, is that a good use of their time to spend a whole half day in isolation room? It's not. And if you think it is, I invite you guys down to Mill Creek and supervise isolation room. I know my time is up, and that's cool. Because what I do have is I have stamina. I have organizing skills, and I am unbothered. Because it's really about people. And basically, what you guys have all collectively done by not having a forethought and a plan is you don't care. And if you do, prove me wrong. I'm telling you right now, timelines, I don't care. Push them forward. Second semester, nah, dog, that's not gonna work for me. We're only a month in, and we have no idea what's happening school to school. So I'm gonna ask you guys to do your job as you're expecting us to do our job and come up with a plan. If you aren't leaders, be followers. Ask your peers in Renton, ask your peers in Auburn, ask your peers in Highline, because I have a child at Highline now because you know my kid's denied at Kent School District because we moved. So now guess what I get? Transparency, communication. Thank you.
All right, Manuel Godinez?
Good evening, school board, directors, comrades of the Kent Educators of Color, colleagues watching at home, former scholars and familias watching on YouTube. My name is Manuel Cadenas. Though I remain active with WEA, both as a member and as a trainer for educators across the state, I no longer can say that I'm a teacher within the district. Though I remain active as a member of this collective, we named the Kent Educators of Color, I no longer can say that I, like most teachers in this district, am represented by KEA as our union. What I can't say is that while I was a certified professional in KSD, I taught in high school at varied levels, but mostly at the freshman and senior level. I was a world language IB instructor. I mentored our young men, which our administrators refer to as at risk, whom I clothed. I helped them author their resumes, and I served as reference for employment opportunities. I advised our Latinx club. On Wednesdays, I was a lunch hero. I passed out lunches along with school supplies for those families in need. I co-led our equity committee for our building. However, tonight I address you as a community member, as a father of 2 KSD students, and a small business owner, shameless plug, Solution by Cadenas LLC, that remains of service to this community, that tutors young scholars, that trains teachers across the greater Seattle area, and still a passionate educator, only from a different platform. As a father, I'd like passionate, invested educators that go beyond their contract, teachers that care, and most importantly, teachers that look like them. Teachers whose walk of life is relatable to theirs and mine. The educators you've heard from tonight are those teachers. I plead with you to listen to what they are asking of you. Listen to the intentionality in their voices. Most of them are overeducated with masters, national board certifications, and an unmatchable heart and drive. Our district cannot afford to lose these educators, much like I left the district. Whatever they are determined to do, they can. And it's something that I encourage of them because we can serve this community from different platforms. Thank you for my time tonight.
And now Jody Madden.
And I was deferring my time.
Okay, thank you. All right, do we still have a few minutes, Ms. Santella, for, we had a few more comments?
Thank you, President Daniels. There are 5 remaining comments, all of which submitted online from non-student. We have 8 minutes left in the initial comment section, so I will start the timer. This first comment is submitted by Jennifer Idsey. I would like to see KSD offer PSAT and SAT testing opportunities to juniors and seniors. We are a very large district, and these opportunities used to be accessible to our student population. These scores are required often for scholarships and college admission tests. I understand that some in-state colleges and universities may not be requiring these tests this year for admission. However, out-of-state colleges and universities, as well as many scholarships, are requesting this information. It is also important for students looking to become teachers in the future to have these tests in place so they can use their scores for becoming a teacher. It isn't fair for KSD to assume all students won't need these tests or that they will all go into in-state schools, or to deny students opportunities by making them go outside to other districts to find a test location. Please consider offering this in the fall and spring for KSD students to take these tests. Thank you for your consideration. Comment number 2, submitted by Veronica Smith-Kasem. Hello, my name is Veronica Smith-Kasem, and I am a KSD parent and community member. My comment relates to the district's recent decision not to offer the SAT and PSAT on district campuses. This decision is in direct conflict with our mission to successfully prepare all students for their futures. KSD provided several unsatisfactory responses to my emailed concerns on this topic. I will reply to each in turn here. Number 1, KSD states that most of our college-bound students attend a college university in Washington, and notes that Washington's public colleges and universities have recently removed the requirement for SAT and ACT scores. Please understand that even if not required, some colleges still use SAT scores in admissions, decisions, and in awarding merit-based scholarships. Number 2, KSD notes that colleges and universities are now shifting away from inequitable gatekeeping practices, such as requiring the SAT. I agree that the SAT has an inequitable gatekeeping effect. It's also not predictive of college success, and I hope it one day disappears entirely. Nonetheless, it's still accepted by many colleges. In effect, KSD itself has become an inequitable gatekeeper by not offering the test. Number 3, KSD notes that the timing of the PSAT conflicts with the SBA and states that the College Board won't allow schools to offer the PSAT during school hours unless they also offer the SAT during school hours. The district then concludes that our students can't afford to lose instructional time. While I agree that all these tests take up valuable instructional time, I ask you to consider the fact that surrounding districts are offering both the SAT and PSAT. Are Kent students truly that different from those in other districts? Further, please recognize that by not offering the PSAT, the district prevents students from competing for National Merit Scholarship. This is a significant potential loss in scholarship money. Number 4, KSD advises that students can take the SAT elsewhere. According to reports on social media, however, surrounding districts aren't allowing out-of-district students to test at their sites. Number 5, KSD offers reimbursement of the SAT testing fee if students prove they have to take the test as a part of their college or university application. Though reimbursement is helpful, it's meaningless since students can't go anywhere else. Even if students could go elsewhere, expecting them to do so, as well as making them prove they qualify for reimbursement, creates unnecessary and possibly inequitable barriers. Lastly, from what I gather, the district did not communicate to students and families about these changes. Something this significant should have been widely communicated with plenty of notice. The district has made it harder for our college-bound students to get into and possibly even pay for college. How is this preparing them for their futures? Comment number 3 from Christy Loganbill. To the Kent School District Board, I am a parent of a first grader and sixth grader in KSD. I am very concerned of the COVID spread in the community, which then affects the schools. Why is KSD not providing a complete and cohesive COVID dashboard to give transparency to the cases in the KSD in our schools? While almost all neighboring districts offer detailed information on cases by school, KSD is only giving us information of open or closed. No visibility into how many cases, if they are students or staff, or if the number of cases are old or within the last 14 days. I looked at the dashboards of Renton, Seattle, Issaquah, and Tahoma districts. They all give more details and information than KSD. They offer total cases by school, how recent, and if they are student or staff. Aren't we as parents entitled to this information so that we have visibility into our school and our child's safety? I have emailed the board previously on this specific topic and barely received a response, and the response I did get was a pushback and/or referred me to someone else who was not helpful or responsive. So I ask KSD again, why not do better for our kids? Do better for our community and provide a cohesive and transparent COVID dashboard for each school. It has also come into light recently that other districts are starting to offer testing on campus. Why is KSD not also utilizing this tool to help solve the issue of spread and stop positive cases from going any further than they should? We all want to keep our schools open, so let's use every tool at our disposal. Don't our kids deserve our very best? Thank you, and I hope the board will implement a much stronger COVID response and tracking to keep our students safe. There's 1 minute and 38 seconds left. Do you want me to save the rest of the comments or 2 more?
Pretty long, I see. Yeah,
Yes.
So we can, yeah, we don't want to interrupt.
Thank you.
All right, we are on to agenda item 3.0, our interim superintendent report.
Thank you, President Daniels.
Thank you.
As we come to the end of the first month of this school year, I remain excited to lead and approach our work each day with a heart full of gratitude. Since spring of 2020, Team KSD members have come together to support the education of our students during the COVID-19 pandemic. While there have been opportunities for improvement, our staff continues to work each day to serve our students and families, even while COVID-19 and the continually changing guidance from the state impact them and their own families. I am grateful for the hard work and dedication of our staff members. I say thank you again, Team KSD. On Friday, September 17th, there were 25 bus drivers out due to illness. Fortunately, we have an excellent transportation team who provided solutions such as combining routes, doubling bus runs, and office staff willing to provide additional coverage. Unfortunately, there were still delays. There was an estimated 30-minute delay for middle and elementary school bus riders. Families were notified by email and text, and a web alert was posted on the KSD website. Under the leadership of Mr. Justin Dennison, our transportation team continues to do a tremendous job transporting our students to school and home safely during this pandemic, even as they continue to fill open positions. Our current reality is that students will have to quarantine due to being identified as a close contact or testing positive for COVID-19. Cases in King County this month are near the levels of positive cases we saw last December. Principals are doing a tremendous job communicating with their schools, sharing as much information as legally possible with families when there is a positive case in their school. We have invested in contact tracers to support this work. They will begin working this month. Contact tracing is an in-depth and lengthy process that our staff takes seriously. In addition, our DARTS team has been working with our partners and Microsoft to centralize our contact tracing and automate reporting. This work is explicitly designed to support contact tracing and communication with impacted families and King County Public Health. The partnership with Microsoft may result in an updated COVID-19 case dashboard. We will share that information as it becomes available. As educators, the challenge is to ensure our students still have access to learning while in quarantine. Our schools have several options to provide learning access for students who are impacted by COVID-19 quarantines, including providing an opportunity for families to pick up a standard packet of general work focused on key skills for the grade level, providing copies of work digitally via Teams, OneNote, Canvas, or Seesaw, or setting up office hours or appointments for students to meet with teachers as time allows. Kent School District is committed to student and staff safety. We will continue to adapt as the situation surrounding COVID-19 evolves and as the Washington State Department of Health and OSPI release new guidance. Just last week, supplemental guidance was released for all K-12 schools in Washington. Our leaders are reviewing the latest guidelines and working together to update our protocols and guidelines as necessary. We will be sending information about any changes based on this new guidance to families very soon. In addition, our communications and public affairs team will continue to communicate regularly with all families and staff through our school and district website, email, mobile app notifications, and social media channels to support all of our KSD families. It will take all of us, students, families, staff, and our community working together to support a healthy, safe, and successful school year. Thank you for your continued partnership during this health crisis. This concludes my report. Thank you.
Thank you so much. All right, we are on to agenda item 4.0, our legislative report, and the public comment time is now closed, and so I see you collected the last of the public comment cards. Okay.
Yes. Thank you. I will talk about a few things happening. I've been busy, as I mentioned, working with our legislative team at WASDA, and the topic of discussion has been mainly on our priority lists and for the upcoming General Assembly, which I will be attending end of the month. And so I'm hoping that we're having discussions internally as well, and hopefully we'll have soon some work sessions on this. But I wanted to point out a few things. One is, as you know, the Senate Bill 5044 passed, which is really requiring onboarding learning experiences for school board directors on educational equity. And under this bill, all the school directors are required to take 2 2.25 hours of professional development and educational equity topics during each of their 4 years. So everyone coming in on the next year will be required to take these hours of professional development. And WASDA has created some pilot programs that are available to board directors. And if you do attend those particular pilot trainings, those would qualify for against this 2.25 hours of PD. And, for me, while I appreciate training, I always also appreciate what is happening in the district, and I'd like to understand how well we're doing some of these trainings like Roots of Inclusion that I read about. I would really like for us to learn more about what the district is doing. I understand WASDA is doing this based on, a legal requirement from the state, and I wonder, how effective something that's not localized is. As much as I appreciate all of the WASDA's trainings, have been very effective thus far. But I guess I'd like a discussion on we have somebody coming in soon for educational equity, and so hopefully we'll get some understanding of what is happening in our schools for our educators as well as for board. So I wanted to just bring that up, that is coming up as a requirement soon. So while President Daniels and I are not going to be here, everyone else will need to, and the candidates will need to be aware of that. Secondly, I wanted to talk about some of the priorities we talked about at this large school caucus meeting. We did talk quite a bit about the school board directors, recruiting and hiring diverse school board directors. And that is going to, as you know, we co-sponsored, that's going to go up for a discussion, and I will be speaking to that particular one. What I wanted to mention is that previous year, as you'll recall, we had our Hunger-Free Bill of Rights legislation that was passed by WASDA. And that then turned into a discussion with the Federal Relations Board. And so now it's escalated to the federal group at WASDA. And so we are going to have another proposal called Universal Free Schools Meal that's coming up for voting. And this is all sort of come from our advocacy. And I think it's very rare to have federal positions that are up on top that are going to get prioritized, but this is going to go way up to the top. And so I'm looking forward to advocating for that as well. And then our typical fully funding education and special education, these are all going to come up as standing positions, but we'll still be able to prioritize even though we're not going to vote on it. So I wanted to just bring those to your attention. And then transportation funding and also our comprehensive school safety, they've narrowed it down to the point where it's sort of all encompassing, but there's still some concerns about funding. How are we going to include certain things like prevention funding, because it got dropped from this particular legislative bill. How can we include restorative practices when there are no security officers like in Seattle? So there's been a lot of discussion about what that's going to include, and I'm hoping there'll be a robust discussion of what it will include, because right now it's just a few bullets to make sure that it's all encompassing. And then finally, I guess, I'm kind of, there was a lot of discussion on the statewide salary schedule. And most large school districts have been bargaining that. So, there have been some districts who are talking about where the costs are higher, that it's in fact better, because currently seniority is not recognized, and so there was a robust discussion on that, and about having sort of a regionalization factor on that. But those were some of the topics, but I'm really excited to vote for our universal free meal position, as well as attracting our diverse school board directors. And that concludes my report.
Thank you. All right. We are on to our agenda item 5, our board of directors items for discussion and approval, and agenda item 5.01, resolution 1611. Is there a motion?
I move that we approve resolution number 1611, appointment of Israel Vela as interim superintendent, and approving interim superintendent's employment contract.
I second.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded. Is there discussion? Mr. Leonard, you know.
President Daniels, members of the board, Ms. Santello, and Interim Superintendent Vela. What you have in front of you is Resolution 1611, which does two things. The first thing it does is clarify and ratify the appointment of Mr. Vela as the interim superintendent. If you recall, Mr. Vela's contract was initially for 30 days as the interim. And as that 30 days became quickly, it went by very quickly, the board found itself at the end of the 30 days, and 2 weeks ago you took action to extend Mr. Vela's contract until we appointed a successor. At the same time, we were still engaged in a search for the interim, and we had already taken board resolutions to go through an interview process and interview. And so what the first thing that the resolution does is it confirms the appointment of Mr. Vela as your interim superintendent and withdraws the process to hire another interim. No, Mr. Vela is your interim. So it ratifies that decision and withdraws the process that you were undertaking previously of interviews of candidates to fill that position. The second thing the resolution does is it approves the employment contract which was negotiated with council and is before you in the board report. Those are the two items that are currently in front of the board in Resolution 1611.
Thank you. And I just want to say that I am very appreciative of Interim Superintendent Vela stepping up and not missing a beat as we have engaged in this process. He's been committed, and so we had other candidates, and we reviewed those applications, and it was clear to us that we were making the right decision. So I am just very excited that you have agreed to step up and serve, and so it's really appreciated. Any other discussion? All right. Hearing none, I'll call for the vote. All those in favor of approving agenda item 5.01, resolution number 1611, the appointment of Israel Vela as interim superintendent and approving interim superintendent's employment contract, please indicate by raising your right hand and saying aye. Aye. All those opposed indicate by raising your right hand and saying no. Any abstentions? Motion carries. On to agenda item 5.02, the highly capable program plan. Is there a motion?
I move that we approve 5.02, highly capable program plan.
I second.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded. Is there any discussion?
I just want to say thank you for the answers to the questions that we asked, and that was helpful, very helpful.
All right. I'll call for the vote. All those in favor of approving agenda item 5.02, our highly capable program plan, please indicate by raising your right hand and saying aye. Aye.
Aye.
All those opposed indicate by raising your right hand and saying no. Any abstentions? Motion carries. 5.03, Career and Technical Education Alignment, RX, Premium Scissor Rack for Kent Ridge High School Automotive Program. Is there a motion?
I move adoption of Career and Technical Education Alignment RX Premium Scissor Rack for Kent Ridge High School Automotive Program.
I second.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded. Is there any discussion?
Well, I had to ask my husband what a scissor rack was, but then when I heard, I was very excited. I'm glad that we have auto mechanics. Just out of curiosity, do all our schools have that? All our high schools?
No.
No.
No?
No.
I'd like to invite our Chief Learning Officer, Ms. Danelle West, and Lori Paxton, our director, who can maybe share some additional information.
Cool. Thank you.
Good evening, President Daniels, Vice President Bettinger, Interim Superintendent Vela, Ms. Zantello. I'm going to introduce Lori Paxton. She should be familiar to all of you, who will be able to respond to your questions.
So currently, we have 3 auto shops, one at Kent Meridian, one at Kent Ridge, and one at Kent Lake. We do not have an operational auto shop at Kentwood, but we do offer a transfer class for Kentwood students to go to Kent Meridian. So all of our 4 comprehensive high school students have the opportunity to take auto classes.
Okay. But if they're at Kentwood, they would have to get their own transportation?
No, we provide transportation also.
Oh, that's awesome. That's good to know.
Yeah.
Yeah, I love that program at Kentridge. When I was watching it, they didn't have it in all the other schools, and so I don't know if that happened recently but it's really a great program, and I commend you.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, I'm excited.
I'm always really appreciative of the CTE programs, not because I'm biased and teach it, but I also think that our students need the skills, like automotive programs, to be able to have skills to have jobs and careers after they leave the school. So I'm very thankful this is on here and appreciate you being here to answer questions.
Yeah. Thank you.
All right, I'll call for the vote. All those in favor of approving agenda item 5.03, the Career and Technical Education Alignment RX Premium Scissor Rack for Kent Ridge High School Automotive Program, please indicate by raising your right hand and saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed indicate by raising your right hand and saying no. Any abstentions? Motion carries. Thank you. Thank you. We're on to 5.04, Career and Technical Education VEX Robotics Kits for Middle School Robotics Program. Is there a motion?
I move adoption of Career and Technical Education VEX Robotics Kits for Middle School Robotics Programs.
I second.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded. Is there any discussion?
No, I know you're standing there, though. What's your most exciting thing about this program for our kids?
That's a great question. There's several things, actually. The fact that all of our middle schools are offering this, I think that might be the most exciting opportunity. And also the fact that we have budget capability to upgrade all of the middle schools with the new next generation robotics is also exciting.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
And do they do competition in middle school also? I know high schools do a lot of competition. Do they do that in middle school?
Not yet.
Okay.
That is something that we're really looking at getting going, though.
Yeah, it's very cool. And the kids are really excited about that.
Actually, I will take that back. They do within their school, they do small competitions, but we're looking at wider.
Larger,
Yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah, I'd like to hear more, not now, but we talked about this during agenda review, hear a little bit more about Project Lead the Way curriculum in its entirety, because I know we unveiled, huge initiative, and I know this is part and parcel of it, but I'm not quite sure how the whole curriculum is connected. So
we did discuss that, and I mentioned that we would get you some additional information specifically on that I can provide maybe through our weekly, and then maybe we also talked about potentially highlighting and doing some more daylighting of that program somehow. So
yeah, or a work session, or maybe go visit.
I would love that. There's a lot with Project Lead the Way that is very exciting. I know that this is a small portion of that, so I would be really excited to hear more about how we're going to offer that district-wide. So I would love to see it as a work session or whatnot, like how we're going to utilize that program.
Yeah. Absolutely. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, all those in favor of approving agenda item 5.04, Career and Technical Education VEX Robotics Kits for Middle School Robotics Programs, please indicate by raising your right hand and saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed indicate by raising your right hand and saying no. Any abstentions? Motion carries. We're on to 5.05, change order approvals for New Valley Elementary School, Springbrook Elementary School, Northwood Middle School, and Kent Meridian High School. Is there a motion?
I move that we approve 5.05, change order approvals for New Valley Elementary School, Springbrook Elementary School, Northwood Middle School, and Kent Meridian High School.
I'll second.
It has been moved and seconded. Is there any discussion?
I have a question. I don't know how pertinent it is, but the New Valley Elementary School is River Ridge, right? So that I'm just curious why that's never in the document, so why it's always New Valley Elementary.
Yeah. I'd like to invite Mr. Dave Buzzard, and he could maybe answer that question.
President Daniels, members of the board, Interim Super Villa, And Ms. Antello, yes, it is New Valley Elementary School. That is the project name. So until the project is completely done, it stays that name, unfortunately. But we will, in parentheses, put River Ridge going forward.
I appreciate it. Thank you.
No
I just
worries.
like, in the future, as we look at this, I just want to, as I look at the paperwork, I just want to make sure. That's just for my brain. Thank you, though.
You're very welcome.
All right, I'll call for the vote. All those in favor of approving agenda item 5.05, change order approvals for New Valley Elementary School, Springbrook Elementary School, Northwood Middle School, and Kent Meridian High School, please indicate by raising your right hand and saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed indicate by raising your right hand and saying no. Any abstentions? The motion carries. 5.06, the renewal, all hands community interpretive services. Is there a motion?
I move that we approve 5.06, renewal all hands community interpretive services.
I second.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded. Is there any discussion?
I just want to say again, thank you to the answers on the questions that.
Can I ask a question about this? If this is accommodation we have to offer, why do we have to vote on this? Shouldn't we necessarily just offer the accommodations if staff have those needs?
I'll invite our Assistant Director, Mr. Matt Tardif, if you can share that.
President Daniels, Interim Superintendent Vela, Ms. Zantello, members of the board, Matt Tardif, Assistant Director of Risk Management. The short answer is the positions are added to each school. There is a accommodation process that we go through. We contract with all hands for the staff to support those employees. So it's as you can see, it's a large amount of money on an annual basis. So we just need the approval by the board.
Thank you.
Sure.
All those in favor of approving agenda item 5.06, the renewal of all hands community interpretive services, please indicate by raising your right hand and saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed indicate by raising your right hand and saying no. Any abstentions? The motion carries. 5.07, renewal, School Insurance of Washington insurance coverage. Is there a motion?
I move that we approve 5.07, renewal, School Insurance of Washington, SIAW insurance coverage.
I'll second.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded. Is there any discussion? I'll call for the vote. All those in favor of approving agenda item 5.07, the renewal of School Insurance of Washington insurance coverage, please indicate by raising your right hand and saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed indicate by raising your right hand and saying no. Any abstention? The motion carries. We are on to our consent agenda items, 6.01 through 6.06. Is there any agenda item that a board member would like to pull? So I'll call for a motion to approve our consent agenda in its entirety, item 6.01 through 6.06.
I make a motion, we approve consent agenda 6.01 to 6.06.
I second.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded. Is there any discussion? I'll call for the vote. All those in favor of approving our consent agenda, item 6.01 through 6.06, please indicate by raising your right hand and saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed indicate by raising your right hand and saying no. Any abstentions? Motion carries. Okay, there are some items listed as informational under agenda item 7. And we are on to our agenda item 8, our final communication from the audience. We do have more comment cards. Did you want to continue reading? Do these first? Okay.
I did want to make a comment on informational item 7.01. I do agree too. I'd like some monthly updates. I know that was asked for. And also, I'm going to ask again, the risk management, there were things on here from the risk management budget. I would just like to see, again, just some high-level documentation of what the plans are. I just learned that the robotics is part of a bigger initiative and things like that. It would be helpful to me as a board director to have someplace online in our shared drive where I can see kind of these initiatives so I can get excited about them and I can understand them and be more informed,
Yeah. Thank you, Vice President Bettinger. Definitely that provides some more clarity for us. So certainly I'll work with our team to provide you and our board more information on that.
Thank you.
All right, Megan Carter.
Hello, everybody. I know I've communicated with all of you throughout the last few weeks. My daughter is in second grade at Emerald Park. She is medically complex and cannot attend in person right now. At the beginning of the school year, we had a plan in place with her IEP team to allow her to watch some of class from a laptop at her desk with her one-on-one paraeducator. It was a special ed accommodation, a special ed service that was based on her needs. 5 days into the school year, that was pulled with no explanation other than we were told it was some kind of contract violation. As far as I know, contracts don't supersede special education services, so it was quite a shock to us. We've had 4 IEP meetings since in the past 3 weeks. She is still not getting her education, and she is absolutely being harmed by this, by the district. We don't care how she gets her education as long as her IEP can be met. The problem is her IEP cannot be met without any access to her classroom. So it is not her fault that she has medical conditions that prevent her from being inside a classroom right now. We have a way to deliver those services. It worked well for the first 5 days. We know it works. She also had the same accommodation in kindergarten in 2018 before remote learning was even a thing that we all knew about. She had this and did this. So to have it pulled away from her is just really disturbing, and we're not getting anywhere with all of these meetings. We're being told she can have 1 hour a day of home instruction services with an adult, no access to peers, no access to general education, and no access to about 75% of her IEP. And we're being told we need to amend her IEP and remove those goals to fit within the district's very narrow and very rigid placement that they're offering her. So they're telling our family that our daughter is not worth fighting for. And that's the message we are getting from Kent School District loud and clear, and that's the message my 8-year-old is getting, that she's not worth it to figure out an alternative way of doing this. We're told the union won't do it. We're told the district won't do it. It's just not acceptable, you guys. There's a better way of doing this. And there are many kids like her. And I just really wish we could do better and really think about the kids. I don't care about the politics, and I don't care about the agreements and what's going on behind the scenes. I care about these kids who are the most vulnerable right now, who have not had services for 18 months, many of them. And now she's having no access to her education at all and just sitting at home for the last 3 weeks. So I really hope somebody can help us. Thank you.
Erica Billiard.
Hi, good evening. I'm a parent and community member. I have a son at KLA, which is an awesome school. They're doing an awesome job this year. And another one coming into preschool at Seuss Creek, which is another awesome school that's doing an amazing job. And I'd like to do a shout out to all the staff at both of those schools because they're just excellent. I want to talk about what wasn't on the agenda tonight again. Health, safety, and transparency. Again, the board has failed to really work on this. You guys have heard from educators, from amazing educators tonight, from parents over the months that this is something that, you know, we all want. We all need communication and transparency by reinstating an actual dashboard, not a map that shows some colors, that doesn't give us any information. We need actual data so we can decide what's best for our students. It's not okay to just take away that information. The current map's not informative, and families need cases for the students and staff by school, just like every other district is currently providing. KSD is alone in not providing this information. It is not okay. It's really not. Why would we have provided this information last year when, you know, but not this one, when community spread is so much higher, Delta is so much more dangerous? Why are we just not giving people this information? It doesn't make sense. And the communications department clearly has the time and energy to do this because they're doing PR pieces on KSD, you know, for the Kent Reporter and other newspapers. Like, the time and energy is there to update the dashboard. We demand it as parents. We demand having this information. You guys need to provide it for us. We also need to increase the health and safety in the district by testing and offering vaccines. This is an area where people don't have cars. People don't have access to go down to Renton or Auburn to get testing, or sometimes, you know, even a couple miles away to take their family who might be sick to get testing. KSD is in, you know, a really good position to offer testing and vaccines as a comprehensive, like, wraparound service for the community to really help everybody out. Districts like North Shore are already doing this, and we should be really leading the way in this in an area of such high community spread. We also need to offer students who are medically complex and isolating better access to education, like Megan spoke to. I know several students who are not getting their education, and this is also not okay. We need it. And with the upcoming bonds, KSD needs to be on the right side of all of this, of transparency, of equity, of communication. You guys need to do better so you have the community's trust to approve the bonds that our kids need. So thank you, and I hope that this item will be, all of these items will be on the next agenda and really discussed and made decisions about. Thank you.
We are on to our board reports and discussion. We can start with Director Daniel. You want to start?
Pardon me,
President
President Daniels.
I apologize. I'm so sorry. There were more comments. I'm sorry.
Thank you. President Daniels, board members, and Interim Superintendent Velo, that we have 2 additional online comments to read. This first comment is from Nancy Tom. By failing to offer the PSAT test this October, the Kent School District has failed my son and many other 11th graders across our district. I've seen the excuses put out as why KSD decided not to offer it this year. One reason was because they also have to administer the Sba testing, which is a state requirement. All the other schools and school districts in our state have figured out how to offer both to their students. Why couldn't KSD figure it out? This is just another excuse. It doesn't look like KSD tried very hard or had the appropriate information when making the decision. The Sba window is from September 27th through November 10th. There are only 3 days to offer the PSAT. 2 are on school days, October 13th and 27th. There is no reason they could not have signed up to offer the PSAT on the Saturday date, October 16th. This would not affect school and would not take away from students' learning, which were stated reasons as to why KSD wouldn't offer it. What is the reason KSD chose not to offer this test on Saturday, October 16th? Please educate yourself on what the PSAT test is. I keep seeing KSD refer to it as not needed for college admissions to public colleges in Washington State. This is not what the PSAT test is used for. The sole purpose is not for admissions to college, but to try and earn a National Merit Scholarship. Each year, about 1.6 million juniors enter the national merit competition via the PSAT. Telling families the only way they can take the test is to find another district willing to allow outsiders is ridiculous, especially during COVID. Not only is it ridiculous, it is not equitable. How does this prepare our kids for their future by denying them the opportunity of receiving a national merit scholarship? Students would never get away with all these poor excuses in the classroom, but yet KSD didn't hesitate to claim these as reasons they weren't going to offer the test to our students. Do better, KSD. Our kids deserve better than this. My son and many others were actually going to look forward to the opportunity to take this test in order to possibly earn merit scholarship money for college. This is not a test that should be cut because KSD is too lazy to figure it out. You need to find a way to offer this to any student who wants to take it. KSD needs to get back to making kids our top priority and not adults. This is a test that benefits students. Thank you for your time and consideration. The last comment for the evening is submitted by Jenny Franson. I am really disappointed in the response and inaction by KSD regarding not offering the PSAT, SAT testing this year and ongoing. The students deserve better from the district. Our surrounding competing districts offered the testing to their students, but due to COVID restrictions, they will not allow out-of-district students to take it. This gives our students no options to take the test. It is extremely disappointing that our students lost out on the opportunity to be a National Merit Scholarship semifinalist. They lose out on scholarships and more. Many want to attend out-of-state colleges that require this for admissions. You are totally missing the mark not offering these tests. That's the final comment. Thank you.
Thank you. My apologies. Board reports, Director Benno.
Yes. I want to start with kudos, like I always do. And I want to thank the Kent Educators of Color for sharing your stories and passion. And I hope we can create change quickly to support our scholars and our students. And we hear you, we see you. At least I do, and I hope we all do. I also want to thank educator staff in the district for all the work that they're doing. We know it's been a tough year. As a classroom teacher myself, I understand the challenges and stress that it takes to be back. And I empathize and I sympathize, and I hope that we can do better to support all our educators and staff. So I feel you, and I hope that we can support you in ways. Since our last board meeting, I have not met with any constituents, but I have an upcoming meeting with the GSA at Kentwood High School, so I'm excited to meet with them in October to kind of talk to them and hear any concerns that they have. So I'm always excited to meet with students. And that's it. So I always invite people to invite me. I would love to meet with student groups. Love it. So I would love to do that. So feel free to reach out to me. Some personal notes for me. Over and over via email, I keep hearing about the COVID dashboard and information. And I understand our reasoning for why, because it's not OSPI guidance anymore. Again, I think about like, what's the harm in offering above basic information? And I also agreed with thinking about why we had it last year and not this year. So I'm just putting it out there into space and all the concerns that families and people have emailed and that I've heard. I think it's really important, and I hope we can reconsider that. I don't think just because OSPI guidance says we don't need it, that we should just strip it away. I think that sometimes we can go above and beyond and we don't have to do the basics. I think we can do more, and we should do more, I think. But that's my opinion. I hear that SAT and PSAT concerns from parents and families. I agree. And I'm going to say I'm not a proponent of standardized testing. I don't believe in the SAT, and mostly just because of its racist and discriminatory practices in past. And so I don't think we need to promote it. But I do hear families and parents saying that it's needed for scholarships and admissions into out-of-state schools. And again, just because Washington schools aren't necessarily offering doesn't mean we should just strip it all away. I think that there should be plans in place. And I don't think that SBA, and I know as a board director, it's my job for test scores and whatnot to look at it. I don't think that the SBA doesn't do anything for students. I think the SAT does more for students than the SBA. And the students don't necessarily get anything from the SBA, in my opinion. I think they get more from the SAT and the PSAT, and that we should think about offering something in the spring, even though it may be too late to do that now. But again, That's just kind of what I'm hearing from parents and families. I think it's important to kind of listen to their concerns. I also read an article from the Department of Health talking about testing in schools, COVID testing in schools. I know they highlighted North Shore School District, and the article is basically talking about like local districts partnering with health centers in their areas. And I heard Interim Superintendent Vela talking about possible stuff with Microsoft and whatnot. I think we should look into what DOH is saying on that. I'm kind of curious about that article. Several people emailed me about the Seattle Times posting an article about ventilation quality at schools. I don't know if people saw that. It's a database basically of all the schools in Washington listed by district and school, and the ventilation air quality, excellent, good, fair, or poor. And I thought it was very interesting that to look at. So I would advise people to check that out. Kent had mostly fair and above. There was one that was listed as poor, and I thought that was kind of interesting kind of think about. So for me, I just want people to stay safe, healthy. I want our students to be safe and healthy. Again, we're all here for students. We need to make sure that they're our main consideration, that what we do, the students should always be in the center of, and we also need to support our staff and the people who work here to support them. So that is the end of my report. Thank you very much.
Well, I also appreciated our Kent educators of color speaking to us today. I am a little bit concerned about what I heard with regards to the district being a gatekeeper, and I guess I'm trying to understand, some specifics on that, because I think it's important if there are messages that are coming to us that people know we are getting those messages, and there are different ways to get it to us through phone number or through our phone, which is on the website, or just directly email us. But I do think that's really important, that there's some trust there that the district is allowing information to flow to the board. So I just wanted to mention that, and interestingly enough, earlier I was asking Dr. Behringer, what are we doing for the adults in the schools? Because I know with work, we can't take care of our clients until we take care of ourselves. And so I don't want to just say I heard you. I really feel like we need to do something, and we need to do it quickly. Because it's not okay for our educators to say we're struggling. And to me, there are many things that came up today, but I think that is probably the most important matter to address. We have to address that because our kids are not going to get better, and they're also going to struggle until our educators are know that they're valued, that we are listening to them, and we're paying attention to all the concerns that they brought up today. So I just want to say that. And then in terms of testing and all of that, that seems secondary, but I agree with having some options for our families. I think in 2003, I had to take my son way over yonder in Bonnie Lake or someplace, and I remember coming back and complaining about that these are opportunities, that our kids have, and that's something that the educators of color just said also. We test them ad nauseum, but then when there are opportunities, we don't give them that opportunity. So I'm listening to that as well, as I think it's a valid concern. And then in terms of health and safety, I too am not really clear on the arguments of why we're not putting all the data, but I know Executive Director Larmy has put out some information on that, and I'm sorry, I haven't paid that close of an attention, but I think it's really important that we are transparent and I don't like using that word. Sometimes it's oft-used word that sometimes become meaningless, but I think if our families are asking for details, yeah, we need to provide that. And whatever barriers there are, we need to explain that, but at the same time, we need to provide that information that's going to be relevant to them. So with that, I just want to close. I've been very active, involved with WASDA's legislative meetings, and so I haven't had a chance to attend school events and so forth. So I hope to do some of that before I leave the board. So thank you. And thank you to all for attending and supporting our students.
So me, I just, I've been listening all night, and I'm going to echo what Director Benno said, what Director Vengadaslam said. I appreciate everyone who writes to us, everyone who speaks at meetings, everyone comes to meetings, because a lot of times that's the only way I know that something's going on. So I would say anyone out there watching at home too, I really appreciate it. As an individual board director, each individual board director can't take action on anything. That would be illegal. So it takes a group, it takes a majority to ask for things. So I am now the third person saying, yeah, I think it's important. Health and safety is important. I would like to see, going forward, I'd like to see this district being proactive. I would like to see this district being completely honest, even if it's hard truths, right? I always think that people will, understand if you're honest, and there's so much. I went with Interim Superintendent Vela to 3 schools, and I saw firsthand that, everybody's working really hard in these schools with our students. We went to Kent Lake and Cedar Heights and Cedar Valley. So I want to thank Principals Maher, Hansen, and Stollard for showing us around, and, just seeing that, there were 3 people serving lunches in Kent Lake because of illness, people out, when there's normally 9, and things like that. So I have been in the schools and looking, and I'm just seeing, I just have friends that teach in other districts too, and this year is a challenge for our staff and our students and their families, and I have similar safety concerns. I have similar concerns for our students, making sure that they're getting educated and, getting the education they need, and making sure that we are proactive. I got to attend the online open house for Kent Ridge, since I still have 1 child left in school. And every teacher mentioned that, that they're themselves making contingency plans in case, we have to close, or the state says we have to close. And I think as individuals, we're all making contingency plans all the time as well. And so everyone is under this stress of doing their very, very best. I just echo the fact that people are asking for information. They're asking for us to be proactive. They're asking us to put the children first. I also noticed that comment about gatekeeping, and so if there are emails that should have come to the board, I hope that they'll be forwarded to us. I hope that everyone knows they can write Kent Board at kent.k12.wa.edu. It's on the website too. Every email I've gotten, every school I've been in, every educator I've spoken to, every parent, everyone's doing their best, I think, but I just want to see us be proactive and honest, and make sure that kids are truly the center, and that we're not doing things to make adults comfortable, but that we are doing things truly for our kids. And I'm looking forward to the opening of River Ridge later this month. And I hope whoever will invite our former board directors too that were involved with that. so they can participate. That's all I have to say.
Thank you. So I want to thank everyone that came and spoke and those that are watching. We appreciate seeing you and hearing from you. I kind of echo the sentiments of my former board director, so I won't restate what they said, but you know, one of the things working in a district, it is, you know, self-care has become very, very important. And I know we focus a lot on our students, which is, of course, our number one priority. But again, as Director Vengadaslam said, if we're not taking care of ourselves, it is very difficult for us to take care of our students. And I think a lot of times, you know, people kind of forget that staff members also have families and kids and things like that. And so we also struggle. I have a student who is still in school as well. And so, and a lot of times there's an expectation that administrators and people who are, you know, staff members, I think people forget that we also have families and we also are struggling and working through this just as all the other families are. And so we do understand and empathize, and we have the same questions, we have the same concerns, we have a lot of the same sentiments as you do. And so, but also, we also know that we are all, I agree, we are all, many I feel are doing the best that they can and struggling through this together. And so it's not ideal all the time. It is not going to meet everyone's needs all the time. And so I just really appreciate grace when, you know, when we do misstep. We're going to misstep because a lot of us have never done this before. We're going to make choices that may not be reasonable or people might not agree with because we're going through this together, and many of us have never done this before. But listening to the comments and families and staff is critical, so I appreciate that. And I do, like my other board directors, I do, there's some follow-up I think that needs to happen with regards to some of the comments and things that we heard tonight. So, but again, I just continue to give grace to my kids, you know, school, and there are some things that could be done better, absolutely. But you know what, I do understand, and so I feel as though, you know, we will get past this, we will get over this, but I can't say how much I appreciate having an insider view of the things that happen and the things that, you know, districts have to go through in order to make simple things happen. I do completely appreciate and understand the work that goes into it. And so I want to thank everybody that streamed. I'm not sure if I said that yet, that are watching. Thank you for spending your time with us. And I hope everyone has a wonderful evening. We are now adjourned. I almost took my mask off. That would have been bad.
Save that for the next board meeting.
I am. I kind of like it.
Take that home.
Okay.
Hey, Sue.
Do you have anybody just for me? All right. There we go.